We did our duty. Now I'm delighted to say we're joined by two stalwarts of the show. Lee Anderson, who is of course a new Conservative MP. Seems mad to say that because you look as if you've been doing it all your life, quite frankly, for Ashfield. And of course Baroness Kate Hoey. I'm never quite sure if I can. I'm supposed to say Baroness Hoey, aren't I, or Kate?
You can call me anything.
Well, thank you very much indeed. Do you remember how they got upset with old Meghan Markle because she doesn't seem to know how to call herself? You know, she's either Meghan Duchess of Sussex or Duchess of Netflix, as I like to call her, or the Duchess. But she calls herself Meghan the Duchess of Sussex, which is entirely wrong.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know why she needs a title because she obviously hates the royal family.
She does.
I don't know why she
does.
wants her title.
We'll come back to them. Go back to them later on. Lee wants to talk to us about a particular variant that you want to bring up with us that you're worried about.
Yeah, it's this new variant. Well, I say it's a new variant, Mark. It's been around for 2 or 3 years. It's called the Islington variant. It seems to be affecting Labour politicians who spend most of the time on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or reading The Guardian, and it's spread like wildfire.
It does
in
spread
the
like
north
wildfire.
And in the Midlands. But the good news is there is a cure.
Yeah.
It's for ex-Labour MPs, it's 5 years in isolation.
Right.
For ex-Labour councillors lost their seats 2 weeks ago, it's another 4 years in isolation. But for the Islington one, there's no cure at all.
There is no cure. Funnily enough, we've been talking about how many times he's been in isolation because he seems to have been hiding away for a long time. But even his own party now want him to go into isolation. Kate, you were once a member of a very proud Labour Party, which seems to have lost its way completely, doesn't it?
Well, Brexit was the real turning point, although before that I think we had begun to lose our contact with real people, as I used to call it. But, the recent elections have been a really very, very bad result. And the sad thing is, because I'm no longer in the Labour Party, but the sad thing is that they don't seem to be learning anything.
No.
I mean, yes, of course they're going to have all these policy decisions and look at things and reflect and decide what made people not vote for them. But for most people, it's very simple. You could decide overnight what went wrong, and what went wrong was they had completely lost their touch. That Islington factor is a sort of London metropolitan factor, and they weren't interested really in the issues that the average person going out to work every morning is interested in.
No.
These Labour leaders, they always have this moment where they have near-life experiences where they actually accidentally clash with a member of the public. So we had Gordon Brown on the lead up to that election, clashing with that lady that he dismissed as
Gillian,
a racist. And then we had Keir Starmer in the recent campaign going down to Bath, down to that pub and clashing with the Labour voting landlord. And they always seem completely bemused by members of the public. They have no point of contact with them. What is it about Labour leaders and indeed Labour politicians?
Well, I'll tell you what it is, Kevin. They're out of touch with Labour voters, and I've always said this: the Labour leadership, the Labour MPs, the Labour activists, the Labour membership have nothing in common with your average Labour voter. I see they're doing a bit of a review at the moment to see why people's left them. Come on, you should have done that, 3 or 4 years ago.
They do that before the election, so you find out.
But by the way, there's a new term for the average Labour voter. Tory voter.
Well, in my area, they call them stupid. They call them stupid in my area, and that's one of the many reasons they're really going to struggle to get these voters back.
Yeah, you see, for years there was a loyalty amongst Labour voters that they didn't really question anything, and they just simply voted Labour. And then once that changed, because those people were very different from the people running the Labour Party, both locally and nationally, and the kind of councillors that got elected. And now once people have made that switch, it's sometimes, I think it's very, very difficult for them to come back unless there is a total change in the Labour Party. And
I was saying to Peter Hitchens, Dan Hodges' column this week, I don't know if you read it, where he talks about how it's not that they don't understand the voters in the north of England anymore. It's the fact that they don't want to listen to what they have to say.
They don't want to hear.
They don't like what they're saying because they don't agree with them. Because they don't talk about trans rights every 5 minutes. They don't talk about, whether or not we should rejoin the European Union. They don't talk about, whether or not you should announce ladies and gentlemen on a train and whether somebody should be arrested for that. They're interested in having a job. And also, I think the Labour Party also think that everyone in the north of England has somehow got a cloth cap and a whippet.
Yeah.
It's almost like they have no clue and they've got no money. And so we must give them all money. Well, Hartlepool is actually quite a respectably well-to-do constituency, isn't it?
Well, look at Hartlepool. It's a great example, Mike. You've got a 70% Leave area.
Yeah.
Traditional Labour heartlands. What did the Labour Party go and do?
Yep.
They picked the worst possible candidate you possibly could for that seat and stuck him there, and basically stuck two fingers up to the electorate.
And they thought because he was a doctor that somebody would go, oh, he's in the NHS, we better vote for him then because they're all heroes, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, I've said it before, but because the Conservatives got people like Lee and others in those so-called red wall seats, they're not the same kind of Conservative, if you don't mind me saying so, than what people had thought Conservatives were. And because they're coming from the backgrounds and from understand and are in touch, they're much more likely to keep the pressure up on Boris on all this stuff about equaling up and getting, isn't that right?
I think you nailed it there, Baroness.
Okay.
You look at areas like mine.
So I told you he was a Tory.
I'm going to doff my cap. In areas like Ashfield and Mansfield and Bowles and Don Valley and Roller Valley and all these places, they've all got new MPs with a local accent, come from a completely different background to the Tory MPs in the south of the country. Nothing wrong with that at all. And actually, we're connecting with the public for the first time in donkey's years, and our public love that.
Yes, I think that's right. Because, I mean, if everybody remembers back to the days of Margaret Thatcher, I mean, her winning sort of formula was not about getting people who were posh Tories to vote for her. It was getting ordinary people, men and women, who had ordinary jobs, but who were aspirational, who wanted to have a nice car, wanted to be able to buy a house, wanted to be able to have a decent life for their families. And that's what you guys represent, isn't it?
Well, it's true, and it's funny that the aspirational socialists, if you like, Mike, normally the Labour MPs, the bourgeoisie, the metropolitan elite. It's all right for them to have nice things, go to private school, have private education, all this sort of thing. But for us, the voting fodder in the North and in the Midlands, you just do as you're told. You can stay in poverty for as long as you want, but keep voting Labour.
Is there a danger, though, that the Tories lose the vote that they have up there if it's not kind of something that they pay attention to, if you like?
The working class voters in areas like Ashfield are incredibly loyal, and they've shown that to the Labour Party for the last 50 or 60 years. If we listen to them and we deliver on our promises we made during the election, we've got Brexit done, we're getting COVID done. If we invest in the infrastructure projects that we've promised over the next 4 or 5 years, then they will be loyal to us. That's all we've got to do, Mark, is deliver.
If you deliver the basics, which I would say, if people are promised that they can keep a roof over their heads, they can put food on their kids' table, have a car in the drive, go to Spain on holiday once a year, they'll vote for you. And Labour don't seem to understand that.
No, they don't understand that, and you're absolutely right. Typical working class Labour, ex-Labour voters are just working class people who do difficult, hard jobs. That all they want to do is put a meal on the table, keep a roof over their, like you say, Kevin. Maybe go to Skegness for once a year in a caravan.
They'll have to this year.
They're not some rabid left-wing lunatic
no, but it's
who wants to
also,
bring governments down.
Isn't it also about loving your country and patriotism as well? Because that is, and even still, even in the last few weeks, we've seen examples of Labour people just you feeling all the time that they just want to. I mean, I understand you want to oppose things in that the government's doing, but it's not even that. It's just a general feeling that they don't believe in the United Kingdom, that they don't actually want it to be successful.
It was a masterstroke of Boris Johnson to send 2 gunboats to Jersey on election day. I mean, you can't imagine Theresa May doing that, can you?
Just fancy that.
But it was just fantastic.
Just happened to be.
But also, wasn't it interesting, though, how many people from, say, the Remain side or the Labour side were sort of squeamish about it? Like, this is how you start a war, why are we taking on the French? Well, because the French threatened to stop electricity being supplied to a sovereign part of Britain. That's why. And so, of course, they side with the French and the EU. And you're kind of going, why would you do that?
Yeah, and I think that's why they're going to have to be tougher too. And I know there's some legislation coming through, which I haven't looked at in detail, about people coming across in boats from France. Because, when we're stopping people going on holiday and coming in and all of that, and then you see literally every day now people coming in.
Well, there's 3,000 so far, according to Nigel Farage, who's always been on top of this story. And Priti Patel, I'm afraid, talks a good game, but she's not doing anything really about it because she can't. There's nothing that we apparently can do to stop it.
Well, apparently we have to get France's agreement to send them back. But I mean, I think what happens is, and it does sound really callous, but they come here and then they're treated extremely well, understandably perhaps, but there's no. And that gets back that, well, look, it's very, very hard wherever you are, but if you make it to England, life's going to be great.
Well, this is the other thing about the left is they tell us all the time it's institutionally racist here, it's horrible.
But you see, that's
people.
But
why do people want to come here then from all sorts of countries, including France, including Belgium, including Spain, Italy, Greece? They can stay in all of those places, but they don't want to because Britain's more welcoming.
Well, the last time I looked, Mark, there's no war in France. It's not war-torn. They're not. People aren't being persecuted like they are, in some countries. It's an incredibly dangerous journey coming across the channel. Why are these people coming over the channel?
It would have been yesterday.
I
was down on the coast yesterday. It was very rough.
They think the streets are paved with gold. There's a lot being taken advantage of by people traffickers.
Yeah.
And you know my view on this situation. I've been as vocal as any MP.
And you've been in touch with Priti Patel, and you've been part of a group of MPs trying to make sense of it all.
And the Common Sense group, it's about 50 Tory MPs, a few Lords thrown in there for good measure as well. And we've really been putting pressure on. The good news is, we've got new legislation coming in this session.
Right.
There's a problem,
you're
talking about the Sovereign Borders Bill. There's a problem with that. I mean, it sounds good. Priti wants to be able to send back asylum seekers if they're illegal or if their applications are not valid. That's good. But the trouble is, it requires the cooperation of the nations of the EU. All 27 nations have refused to cooperate.
Yeah.
So it's going nowhere, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, there was... people were saying a few months back that we're looking at getting an island to send the illegal travellers onto. I'd back that straight away. Stop that draw. That's
but what island?
Well, the Ascension Islands. Let's try that. That's far away. Well, they won't be getting on a dinghy from there, will they?
I mean, people laugh at that, but that's what Australia did, didn't they? I mean, they just...
But this is it. And again, there are people... I mean, Peter Hitchens was saying this. The trouble is with the Tory party, part of the Tory party is a little bit on the woke side, and they're terrified of being accused of doing anything, nasty, because they don't want to be the nasty party. And I think sometimes they just have to be a bit more firm.
I think it's a question of efficiency. What Australia did, yes, geographically they had this handy island, they could put them all in, but the main thing they did is they said, we are going to process your applications for asylum in 3 weeks.
And then
in 3 weeks. And the fact that you tried to get it into this country illegally immediately renders your application invalid. So what we have to do, I would suggest, Lee, I don't know what you think, is and Baroness Hoey, of course, is get the same system going. Process these people in 3 weeks. Why does it have to take 2 years?
Oh, how about 10 years?
Well,
the situation in Glasgow.
I mean, the Home Office is still a real mess, and every party and every Home Secretary comes in and says they're going to sort it, and it doesn't happen.
It never happens. But there's a real will now. We've seen with the new Red Wall MPs. This doesn't sit well in areas like Ashfield and all these northern seats we've got. And we're getting pressure. I mean, I'm a landlocked constituency, and I'm getting loads of pressure, more pressure than some of these southern seats.
Yeah.
And we've got the Common Sense group now. We're meeting with the Home Secretary and the Immigration Department all the time, putting pressure on. So we're making some real noises.
Good.
And they're going to listen to us. If they don't listen to us, then we're going to struggle. At the ballot box.
I think that's right. I think that's right.
And the other very good thing one of the best things in the speech was something I've pushed for ages, was to get, probably some of you won't agree with it, ID for voting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand
not ID
why,
cards,
I
but ID
don't understand why people are so against showing ID. And it's like this nonsense where people go, there's millions of people that don't have any ID. But really? Well, I don't know anyone.
Yeah, but anyway, in Northern Ireland, where it is taken for granted now, if you haven't got a passport or a driving licence or something, you go to your local authority and they give you a card with your photograph on it, and that's it.
Right.
What, in order to be able to vote. Yeah.
Well, so if they're doing it in Northern Ireland, why can't we do it?
Well, exactly, and also it was a Labour government brought it in Northern Ireland. So and then there was this thing that was in the paper the other day about, I think, to get into an annual meeting of one of the Labour Party local branches, you had to show a photograph.
That's
ID.
right. Yeah, Momentum had a meeting to discuss
Palestinian
voter ID.
flag,
Voter ID, but you had to have an ID card to get into the meeting.
Or if you go to a Labour Party conference, you've got to have a photo ID. It's absolute nonsense. I don't know what they're scared of, to be honest with you.
No, I don't. Finally, Baroness Hoey, tell us about what's going on in Northern Ireland. I was glad to hear John Redwood talking at the weekend, saying basically blaming the EU for the problems that they're having, because it's about shipments of stuff coming into Northern Ireland, which isn't going anywhere else. So why would they be worried about it going into the Republic? Well,
Northern Ireland now has got more EU checks on goods than the total checks on the whole of the rest of the EU. It's just ludicrous what's happening. And it's still affecting things like, if you want to go on holiday now to Northern Ireland, take your dog, you have to do all that bureaucracy, get a rabies injection. There hasn't been rabies in the United Kingdom and the Republic of Ireland.
What, if you go from Northern Ireland to, say, Stranraer, needs a rabies injection? Yes, and both ways, you're going to have to do that. There's all sorts of little things. But David Frost, without doubt, has picked up. He visited Northern Ireland last week and he met lots of people, and I think he's picked up the anger.
every single evening now, somewhere in Northern Ireland, there's small protests, demonstrations with bands mainly. No violence, so they don't get coverage, and that is happening. And I think the pressure is on now because they know that the pro-union community is really fed up and angry. And of course, we're coming into what's called the marching season, and that is not going to, that's going to give people an opportunity to protest even more. And ultimately, for me, it's not, even if there wasn't a single check, it's for me the constitutional position, which we had our first day in court on Friday in the High Court in Belfast. It went very, very well. We'll probably end up in the Supreme Court, but constitutionally, Northern Ireland, the Belfast Agreement has been definitely broken because of this east-west stuff, which is and no consent, and also the Act of Union. So, the government's got itself into a mess on this. Understandably, they wanted to get Brexit done. Northern Ireland's been left behind. It's not sustainable, and I'm very pleased to see more and more people are saying that.
Good. Finally, Lee, the next stage after this for me is getting people back into the buildings that are supposed to be occupied by office workers. When do you think we're going to start seeing that kind of movement?
About the same time as the MPs go back into the House of Commons.
This is the thing. I mean, I've been in this morning.
Send
actually,
a signal.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
For the first time in about 6 or 7 months, I actually saw cutlery. Steel cutlery being used at the breakfast table. It's been more chairs there, more chairs in the tea room. We need to get more MPs back in the chamber. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Sends a bad message, doesn't it?
It was terrible. You look at those green benches; they're half empty, and we're all huddled outside trying to get in there, waiting our turn to come in. We've got to send a clear message out to the British public. That is, we need to get back to work, so you can get back to work.
Yeah.
I'm afraid in the Lords there's a lot of people who'd quite like to keep Zooming because they can do it from the comfort of their deck chair.
Yes.
In the United Kingdom,
Yes,
of course. I'm not suggesting they're in the Bahamas or anything.
That would be wrong, yeah. That would be entirely wrong to suggest that. Couldn't be happening at all. Absolutely ridiculous. Listen, great to see both of you. Thank you so much. Lee Anderson, Baroness Kate Hoey. We'll see you very shortly. Kevin and I are here till 1 o'clock. We've got lots of great guests coming up as well. And I hope you are out there spending your money, getting the economy back, and hopefully back to work as well. This is Talk Radio.
Online.